Hey, beautiful soul. Before we jump into the episode, I want to know, did you know that I have a completely free virtual new moon circle called Co-Create every single month? This stemmed out of a constant request for a space or a church that taught so many different spiritual modalities, tools, systems, beliefs, and I didn't have any place to send them. So I created it. In Co-Create, this is the space that I want to bring to you to learn how to create a connection to yourself, your energetics, and the divine in a community that won't make you feel like a weirdo. A space where you can ask any question you want, where we get to dive into so many systems and beliefs and tools, and you get to pick and choose what feels good for you. So you can learn what it means to truly co-create with the universe, God, source, for flow, trust, and surrender, to connect with other women who are spiritually curious in a space that's safe, sacred, and inspirational. It's your space for you to find your people and lean into new spiritual practices to truly co create with the universe or God or source or whoever you feel connected to. You'll gain tools and knowledge to understand what it really means to lean into the universal laws and become magnetic, all while being held by massive feminine energy. I've been hosting these free new moon circles for almost a year now, and it's definitely one of my most sacred spaces, and it's completely free for you every single month. Diana said that she made a promise to herself that she would work on her personal development and growth journey earlier in 2024. So I reached out to her and asked her for a testimonial to share with us. And what she said was Adriana's membership community and Co-Create has accelerated that and more. I have had multiple breakthroughs from finding a new career path, improving my mental health by reducing my anxiety and depression through journaling, meditation, and breath work, improving my physical health, doing walking meditations are my jam, strengthening my marriage and relationships, improving my money mindset, and just setting up a routine that complements my design. I've learned to embrace challenges as a sign of growth. I will continuously do my best to be in harmony with myself, with this world, and the universe. I have never felt so seen, heard, safe, and supported. Her community and Co-Create has helped me connect to my true authentic self, to move with grace and intention, to embrace everyone's uniqueness. And we each have a special gift and are collectively part of this world to show and share it this way. Thank you so much, Diana, for sharing all of your reflections and how Co-Create and my community has changed your life. And now I want to share it with everyone else. The link to register is in the show notes below. Even if you register for 1 month, you will automatically be signed up to be able to join every single month for as long as you're on the list. So you don't have to repeat it every month. You will always get on the list. You will always have the Zoom link available. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Now enjoy the episode. Welcome to the No BS Human Design Podcast. I'm Adriana Keefe, human design coach and motivational speaker. I went through my quarter life crisis in my 20s and had to learn how to navigate through finding what I was meant to be doing with my life. I refused to believe in the culture that said we were all meant to have the same path and boring careers until we retire and die. And along my journey, I found human design, a system that reveals your energetic blueprint, showing you where and how to access your body's consciousness and how to live as your true self. Human design changed my life, so I started sharing it with others and changing their lives, but we were all finding the same problem: a lack of resources that explain the system in easy and useful ways. So I created this show where we dive deep into the lessons of the human design system without the BS and the noise you find on the internet. Listen in for lessons in human design, finding your purpose, manifestation and spiritual practices, human design within business, and so much more. We connect with other experts in the human design and spiritual realm in a refreshingly honest way to help you find your way along your spiritual path and live this life with intention. It's time to let go of the societal expectations of being and let yourself find abundance through being uniquely you. Let's get started. All right, I am so excited to share one of my secret weapons with you guys today. I have my dear friend Heather Fox, and she's just as foxy as her name sounds, here with us to talk all about one of the tools that has worked remarkably for me. And I've tried a lot of stuff. And every time I find a new tool that works for me, I rave about it. That's what I'm a cross of contagion and human design. Everything I'm obsessed about, I want to bring to you. So Heather this month is coming within the Magnetic Rebellion, and we're doing a community clearing. Heather can tell you more about that later if I totally just botched that. But I'm very, very excited to not only let you guys know my story with her modality, but also just to introduce you to Heather in general and the tool that she uses. So Heather, thank you so much for being here.
Yay, thank you. I'm super happy to be here.
Me too. You're such a light. Like I was just looking up Heather's astrology and it's like 90% Libra. I'm like, that makes sense. You're so like calm and cool, collected and like unbiased. It actually works really well for the work that you do. So why
Yes.
don't you take a second to introduce yourself? Who is Heather?
Yeah, so I'm Heather Fox, founder of She is Fox. And essentially, what I do, the work I do is really creating subtle, precise, and intentional shifts in people. And I do that a couple different ways. One is through the use of Akashic records and just helping people get clarity on why are they here, what's going on in their life, relationships, career, and all of that. And the other thing that I do is work with people to shift their mind, their thought process from an unconscious and subconscious programming. A lot of that is given to us. And then as we grow up, we realize it doesn't work so well and it's causing us a lot of pain. And so I work with people to shift that. And so that's really what we did with you, is really focusing on the unconscious and subconscious work. So um, I I have just spent probably 20 to 30 years being fascinated with our minds. So when I was younger, I just had an incredible fascination with how does our minds work? What makes it tick? What makes people tick? Why do people do certain things? Why do they behave a certain way? And I've really been my own experiment throughout life. So I've had, various traumas, as I think most of us have, and just different experiences. And I just, through study and applying and different modalities and things of that nature, have really just dedicated my life to understanding the mind and the energetics around it. And so it's how I landed here, which I'm grateful to be doing the work I am doing. So
And here we are, where she's
yeah.
shifting my energy every time I talk to her. What is your human design?
So I am a 1-3 mental projector.
Which is so funny with the three, because you said I was always my own experiment. I was like, of course you were. You're line three. I love that.
Yes, yes.
And your astrology.
Scorpio, Libra moon, and Pisces rising.
Love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. So we met through a mastermind, I guess, if you will, through one of our mentors. And I've had some really awesome friends in that group because we're all just so aligned in the same things. Like we love the energetics and we also are like, how does the brain work? Like, how can we play with the brain to make it what we want it? And then there were a lot of people who started introducing me to this tool called RRT, and I've tried a lot in the past because my line six self is like I will try everything and I'll see what works and what doesn't. So a lot of things haven't really worked or kept up for me, but very few things that do I am like obsessed with and keep sharing and coming back to, and RRT is one of those. I've even in the small practices that I've learned like meditation wise from RRT, been able to use that for myself and my clients, and it works and it's just like magic. So I'd love for you to tell everyone what RRT is.
Yeah. It's RRT stands for Rapid Resolution Therapy. And so there are a couple key primary things that it's looking to do. One is, it's when working with a client, we invite them to shift perspectives and look at the lens and the world through a different perspective. And one of those key perspectives is that we have been taught that the way we feel is based on what has happened to us or what is happening. And through the basis of this practice, through RRT, they're really looking at it through the lens of how our mind is processing data that is causing us to feel a certain way. So, which is beautiful because through that lens, we now have the ability to shift it. Because if we can shift how our mind's processing data, we can shift our perspective and how we feel versus we can't always control what is or isn't happening to us. So that's one big component. And oftentimes, just doing that alone is really, really powerful and potent because it opens someone's mind, right? It opens up the context of, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot more to life or to world, or there's a lot more solutions and things of that nature versus having a very constricted focus. So that's one piece. The second piece is more of the hypnotic work, which a lot of, some people are like, sign me up, and other people are like, stay away because I don't want you to do anything in that realm. But really what we're doing from a hypnotic perspective is we're taking data that gets stuck in a loop in our mind and we're breaking it up and moving it through our mind. So think of it as like taking, a lot of times we can get obsessive thoughts or unnecessary thoughts or preoccupations. And that's just data looping in our mind over and over and over. And so what we're doing is when we put you into I'll say like a hypnotic type state, your mind is relaxing, you're still alert, you're conscious, like you can speak for that, like all of that, you're very present. But what we're able to do then is to take the data, break it up, move it from short-term memory into our long-term memory so that our mind realizes this preoccupation, this thought is no longer happening right now, but it's something that has happened. And we can talk more about that later. But really, what we're trying to do is break up the data, move it to the appropriate place so that your mind is clear and free and can be useful and productive for you versus thinking about thoughts of things that we can't control or aren't useful or aren't productive or we can't do anything about. You can't do anything about fear and anger and resentment and all of that stuff. So
Mhm.
it's really focusing on shifting that perspective, opening up the mind, and then how do we clear and move the data. And there's several different ways in which we would move data. Some of it's based on what the topic is, right? So we might use something different for anger than resentment or something of that nature, and then a lot of it's also dependent on the person itself and what their experiences is.
Mm.
But that's the goal. And then why it works is because once we clear your mind of that data, the preoccupation, the addictions, whatever it may be, it frees your capacity up and you have energy to apply differently. And so by moving that data out, we're able to get results with people historically much more quickly than some of the other modalities. And so in some cases, it could be one session because once that data is moved, your mind's free, right? Your mind's clear. Sometimes it can take a couple sessions, up to like 5 sessions, sometimes 7. Like anything, varies on the person, how long they've had these challenges, and just the level of severity. But typically, it's a fairly painless and quick, quicker way of hitting some of these challenges that people have struggled with for many years.
Mhm. Yeah, like I've done a lot of EMDR and I still do it. I still am in therapy, so we'll occasionally do it. But I find that it's not as potent for me. It takes longer and it doesn't feel as easy. So what I really love, I mean, people already know if they've been listening here a hot minute that I am very spiritual and I love the science. Like I want to be able to bring both together. So what I really love about RRT is it kind of shows that we're just fucking magicians with our energy. Like it's crazy. Oh, I just got tingles. Like you can just literally change something by changing the way you think about it, and then your body responds. That blows my mind. And so if you don't feel like you are quite open enough to like the spiritual and energetic side of like releasing trauma, like wound cleansing and yoni steaming, like a lot of the stuff that people feel are like way too out there. stuff like RRT is such a beautiful, almost probably replacement for it if you don't feel like you're open for that energetic work.
Yeah, it is really, I love how you blend it because that is what I do in my practice as well, right? There's a spiritual aspect and then the mind. And it's oftentimes um the when the best way I can explain it is when we have these preoccupations and these thoughts, or just like I'm not good enough, or I'm never confident enough, or I can't stop eating Oreos at 10 o'clock at night, and our mind just thinks about it all the time, it consumes all of our energy. And so it's literally like we have this beautiful life, but all we can think about is like, I want to eat this entire sleeve of Oreos at 10 o'clock at night. Right. So then how great is your life when at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're thinking about eating the entire sleeve of
Mhm.
Oreos at 10, like your life, you're not actually living. And so this is a beautiful way, regardless of beliefs and where you're at with spirituality or not. It's like at the end of the day, these thoughts are not useful.
Mhm.
And so how do we shift them out of the way so that you can then go on and live your desired life or live in a way
Mhm.
that feels good to you? And the amount of energy that people get back is phenomenal. I think it's often underestimated, but if we think about how often I think about eating the sleeve of Oreos, and now I'm not thinking about that, like there's
I mean,
so
well,
much.
now I am.
I know, I should use that analogy. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have so much more brain power to like
Mhm.
think about actually fun, exciting things, or energy to actually use and go do something versus this thought pattern. So it's very, it doesn't matter, your belief system. At the end of the day, these thoughts aren't useful. So let's shift them and get rid of them.
Yep, exactly. And you touched on this a little bit already, but just to really hammer it in there, this is not hypnosis. And I mean, I've done a few different types of hypnosis, and the only one that's ever worked for me is available in the Magnetic Rebellion for people. Whoever wants to go and do hypnosis with that, there's a whole workshop in there. But no other hypnosis has ever worked for me except for that one. And RRT is not hypnosis. Like you were saying, you're not like put to sleep. You are completely aware the whole time. That hypnotic state is not what you might think it is. So if anyone is sitting there afraid of being like, well, how do you do that virtually? Or what could you plant in my brain? It's none of that. In fact, the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I remember from our two sessions together was you doing like the hula. Like I just keep seeing you doing like the waves with your arms. That's like, honest to God, one of the only things I remember, which is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I thank you for bringing that up because you're with me the entire time. So I do all my sessions through Zoom. So I'm never with you. I'm never like physically present with you. And really what we're doing is just getting your mind to be in a relaxed state, because when your mind is in a relaxed state, your nervous system starts to relax, your brain, more of your brain comes online, so we can access more of your brain, right? So and if you think about it, if something's contracted, it's really hard to move stuff through, or if it's more relaxed, there's more space, let's move the gunk through the brain. So we're just taking you into this like meditative like state, but you're always alert, you're always conscious, and I don't actually have the power to put stuff into your brain. So oftentimes when we're rewiring, working with the client to figure out what is it, what do you want it to look like, what is your desired life. And many times I don't even have the client doesn't even need to share that with me. It's what do you want it to be, and then we create the pathway for the mind to shift the data for you to implement it. So what you were talking about, we did a meadow, and this exercise is so silly and so funny, and but what it's doing is when we have data that's looping in our mind, it becomes this preoccupation, and we want to neutralize it and make it indifferent, so that the thinking of the sleeve of Oreos is no different than the bunny outside my window eating grass. Like it's just like there's a bunny out there, there's a sleeve of Oreos in the pantry, like they're neutral. But we want to break that down into the brain. And so what Adriana and I did was this silly thing where I had her tell me about this traumatic event. Actually, it was a traumatic event from when you were younger, but I had you tell me the entire story in using only one word, and that was meadow. And the reason for that is to neutralize the trauma that occurred. And when we can neutralize it, we can move it through the brain from the short-term memory. So the body doesn't think, hey, this is happening now, versus, oh yeah, this is something that occurred. Like when I was 10, I fell off my bike and skinned my knee. Yeah, that's something that happens, but it's not something that I'm thinking about daily. So by moving this traumatic event through neutralizing it, we can move it to the long-term storage so that it's not impacting you. So Adriana told me this entire traumatic story by saying meta, 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 meta. It is so silly. Works to move those stories, those things. Like oftentimes it's hurtful things, like someone did something to us, or it was a really bad decision that led us into a bad position or whatever, to move it through and then to add it because we want to confuse the brain so the brain can't keep up, so the brain can decompress and let the data move through. We added movement. So as she was telling me the story in Meadow, I was making these crazy like movements with my hands, and she was having to follow it, which is really hard to do. And when it's all said and done, well, I'll let you speak to experience, but typically what people are saying is that then they can then tell the story using English language, and it's just very neutral, very matter of fact, as if the bunny were eating grass outside my window. It no longer has the emotional charge. So because it doesn't have the emotional charge, we've given that energy back to you and cleared your mind of whatever the event may be.
So wild. I'm sitting here trying to remember what event we even discussed, and I
It's
can't.
beautiful. That's
I'm like,
beautiful.
I literally don't know. If you were to tell me, I'm sure it's a memory that I have, but yeah, I can't actively think of what it is. So that it's just so fascinating. And I'm happy to like share all of my story and what we were actually going to work on. I told Heather she could share anything about my sessions if she remembered it, because I don't remember much except for why we did it. And the first one, it initially started with the first one with emotional eating, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then I felt like I had a little bit of shifts, but there was a lot of anxiousness. So what this actually presented in me was daily chest pain, daily shortness of breath and anxiousness. Then would definitely get worse with nighttime snacking. So that's leave of Oreos. That actually wasn't my example, but I can relate to that example. And I would like already anticipate the struggle with wanting to snack late at night. And what that actually was looking like in my real life was impatience with my husband, impatience with my kids, because I mean, most of the day I like couldn't breathe. And this, it has seasons of its life, and this was a rough season. So you and I worked on that a little bit, but then when we came back, you realized that there was like a much deeper anxiousness underlying that emotional eating. And we really needed to focus on the anxiety from a safety level more than anything. And right off the bat, you were like, this is likely not a one session kind of thing. And I'm very aware of that. I'm like, yep, like I've got some stubborn ass Taurus energy. I'm sure it'll take fucking years to clear this. Okay. We knew that. I don't know how the fuck, like, I don't even, you cleared that shit. It has been months. When did we do that?
Oh
December?
my goodness.
I
It was
don't
a while
remember.
ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah,
It was,
somewhere late
look
2024.
it up here.
I know it was after my retreat for sure.
It was September.
No,
September and then November.
November. Okay, there
Yep.
we go. I was like, that doesn't feel right. So, not only do I feel totally normal around if I do want to have a snack at night, but I can only recall 2 days since then that I've noticed had a noticeable anxious, like heavy chest feeling. And I remember in the moment being like, why am I so impatient? What's happening? And it was almost as if I didn't remember that that was like a daily occurrence for me. It's so wild because I have lived with anxiety my entire life. I mean, look at my childhood history. Like there was a very obvious reason for this. And the fact that we were able to clear so much in that 1 second session. I kind of call that its own session on because it was a completely different focus.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. Not to say anyone who tries it is going to get one and done. That's not what I'm saying, but it does speak for the potency of this if you are open to like really receive it.
Yeah, so it's essentially 6 months, about 6 months. Um, yeah, so the anxiety, um, what we did, as I just looked back on your notes, we pinpointed some childhood trauma that was naturally causing the anxiety. And so what we did was a couple of different things. One is we looked back on that childhood trauma, which it was emotional, right? So not that we really focus on reliving it, but the emotional trauma that was associated naturally brought up emotions. And then I had you look at that little girl in your childhood experiencing the trauma and then bringing yourself back to you and I on our session in September. And you and I were right there looking at it. And as you looked back, you could see everything this girl, you, had accomplished throughout life. The little things that you had dreamed of as a kid, you now had. The family, the experience, the business, the type of work, all the things you overcame, that this little girl, what she needed to realize at the time she was experiencing that trauma as a little girl, she needed to be able to see beyond what was in her future, see what her future held. And the reason that's important for our mind is because we get stuck in trauma, right? So this event happened to me as a kid. We get stuck there not realizing that there's a future. And so our mind thinks we're back here as a child. And what's happening is, just a little side note on the mind, is that our thoughts and sensations, the purpose of them is to create an action. And so if no action can be taken, the thoughts and sensations don't go away. So I'm going to take a little side note just to like help people understand this, is that if I all of a sudden I'll have a sensation of thirst, right? Oh, I'm thirsty. The thought is, oh, I haven't drank any water this morning. I should probably go get some water. I go into the kitchen, I get a drink of water, I take the action. What happens? As I drink the water, the sensation of thirst goes away. And the thought, I need to go get water, goes away. So the thoughts and sensations are working beautifully to get us and alert us to take an action. Well, that works perfectly when an action can be taken. But a lot of the things that we struggle with as humans, action can't be taken. Resentment, guilt, shame, regret. What action are you going to take? So then what happens is the mind loops: thought, sensation, thought, sensation, thought, sensation, because there's no action you can be taken. So what we did then is went back to see this little girl. We pinpointed this time she experienced the trauma. We needed her mind, your mind, to understand that she had this beautiful future ahead of her, because then the mind realizes, I'm here in the future, I'm no longer here as the little girl. And so that's the perspective shift. So as we looked at this little girl and everything she has accomplished and created in her life, which was more magical, and it's just like amazing that you created this life for yourself, you know, despite the trauma that you went through, and just shifting that perspective, that's the expansion of the mind. And then what we did, because there was so much emotion stored with this trauma, which is super, super common, that's when we did the silly meta, where you're telling me the story of everything that happened to neutralize it in your mind, break it down in your mind so we can shift it to long-term storage. So we did that. So we brought it forward, we shifted the perspective so that the mind realized this is something that has happened to me and isn't happening to me now. And the mind, because it realizes it's not happening to you now, it then realizes it doesn't exist. If it's not happening, it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, there's nothing I need to do. Mind is now clear. Mind, you don't have to do anything because it doesn't exist. Adriana is sitting with me here and now. She's not this little girl in this past. And then when we neutralized it, moved all of that emotion and the stored memory into the long-term memory, then you cleared your mind. And that's essentially how it works. It's so, sometimes I think it's so simple, and just like you were saying, like, it's so potent, and I've seen this with client over client over client that it happens. I've experienced it myself, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this works. Like, I'm
I know.
so it's so simple. And when I explain it, you're like, really? That's it? It is it. We just need to move that information and help the mind see that it's not happening. And then your
Mhm.
mind's clear.
It's so wild.
It is.
Like, and I just thought of this. I did not put this together until we were talking just now. I have been working with she's like a lifestyle nutritionist, but we're working on putting on muscle. So we're working on a higher protein diet. And she has one of those in-body scans. We don't look at weight, like it's like a whole thing that scans how much muscle, fat, visceral fat, all this stuff you have, your metabolism. So it's like a real picture, real snapshot of your body. I started that in September. I had my check-in in November, and then at that point, there's an inflammatory marker on it, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. But I noticed that my inflammatory marker was higher at that first check-in, and didn't think much of it because I was like, well, there's a lot of newness, like new protein, whatever. And really, this was around the time when I started to recognize, because this is when I was chatting with you, this emotional load. This is actually probably now I'm realizing as I'm speaking why this got so triggered in the fall was because I started looking to put on muscle and I started paying attention to how much food I was taking in and the macros and all of that. So that actually makes perfect sense why that got so heavy in the fall. And then so that check-in was before my retreat, before I met with you. Now, last week I just had my next check-in. I mean, obviously, muscles up, fats lower, but something that she was surprised to see, like a happy surprise, was my inflammatory markers dropped significantly. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like, I'm not doing anything different than I was before. And now, as we're talking, I'm like, oh, but my energy around how I was taking in food completely shifted. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I can't say for certain, but I have experienced that personally myself as well as other clients. And what I would attribute it to is that we're calming the nervous system. So if you think about, your mind, like thought, sensation of like, I need to go do this, and your mind is all about survival, and it's just on and on and on and on and on and on. You're always in that sympathetic or that survival state
Yeah.
for sympathetic nervous system, right? So your body is essentially shut down and it's in survival mode. So when we free the mind, it's no longer looping. Like if you think of it like when it's looping, it's like a knot tightening tighter, 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 because the addiction or the thoughts get stronger, 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 stronger. Now all I can think about is my stomach weight or whatever it may be. And so when we release that, your body calms down because your mind's not freaking out. When your mind's not freaking out, your nervous system's now in that parasympathetic state. The parasympathetic state allows your body to rest and digest. So if we can actually rest and digest our food, like it's intended to, like it naturally does, everything flows through our body. And if you just think about the mind, when you're looping, everything's inflamed, right? Everything stops, it's contracted, it's inflamed, versus like, oh, thoughts come in, thoughts go out. You have so much more capacity of how you want to go about your life, but your nervous system is calm and it's just your body's able to function. It's literally no longer inflamed. So it doesn't surprise me. That is something I can't prove that is technically correlated or technically directly related, but I have seen that correlation in many people, or I've had people come to me with autoimmune diseases where
Mm-hmm.
they're freaking out, like, I won't get any better, it won't get any better, or they have rashes. And of course, the more nervous you are, the more obsessive you are, the more your body's freaking out, the less energy your body has to fight the rash, or the less energy your body has to fight the immune system. And so when we start to shift those thoughts, open up the perspective, their body's healing, and they're like, I don't know why, but I'm not taking my medicine anymore, or the rashes are gone. And that's because we shifted you back into that parasympathetic state where your body can then heal because your mind isn't sucking all the energy on these useless thoughts. So it's really fascinating, and kind of going back to your comment at the beginning about energy, it's so fascinating about we only have so much energy. So if we're going to focus it all on these useless thoughts, our body doesn't have the energy to do the other stuff. So if we get rid of that, now our body can go take the next highest priority, our health and well-being. And so seeing a lot of shifts there. But yeah.
It's so crazy. Like, this is so much deeper than just I'm having these spiraling thoughts. Like, there's so many layers and levels to the what the thoughts do to the body, whether positive or negative. That's why this is so important. It's not just about like the surface level, feeling anxious or whatever. It's like all the things that happen because of that, internally and externally.
Yeah, you just made me, I just jotted down, you made me think of two things, because what I also see that is outside of this modality, but it impacts us significantly, is the lens. So if we're constantly have these thoughts, whatever they may be, it might be like, I can't lose weight, right? I'm chubby or whatever, or I have acne, or I have eczema on my skin. So we start to see these lens. Our mind is now looping, which means we don't have full access to our mind. It starts to impact our identity.
Hmm.
And that's really where I see people um, who live with these thoughts, their lives really start to break down. So, yeah, there's an impact on our physical body, there's an impact on our mind. But once we take on an identity of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I suck at this, I'll always have bad skin, I'm always going to be overweight, that starts to impact our decisions.
Yep.
And then we spiral in other ways, and it impacts our relationships. And then what I see with parents is it impacts our parenting style, because it will be like, well, we're just all overweight, or we're just, yeah, you're just not going to have good skin, or it can even just impact how people show up. So you're not, if you're obsessed about your body and always trying to lose weight or always trying to like do the latest skin technology, then you're not present with your kids. And now it's like all of a sudden people will come to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on now, my kid's doing this and they're getting in trouble at school and da 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 da. So it's just this trickling effect. And I don't say that out of fear, because I don't want people to freak out, but I do want people to realize, to your point, like it's all connected, and it impacts so much more. And it starts with really the thoughts in our mind. So by clearing those, yes, you have the physical impacts. You feel better because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not obsessing over this anymore. And what I love is most people will say, like you've said a couple times, I almost forgot what it was. And
Hmm.
the purpose isn't to erase it, but the purpose is to be like, that isn't how you operate. And so you almost forget that's how you used to operate. But by doing all that, you start to shift your identity. And when you start to shift your identity, you show up for yourself differently. And when you show up for yourself differently, you make different decisions. And when you make different decisions, your life changes. So now instead of thinking like you're not worthless, you're never going to have the money, whatever, all of a sudden you start to realize like people are like, I have money in my savings account. I never used to. Like it just happened because they now realize, like, of course I have money. Of course I'm worthy of having a savings. Of course and then the identity is like, oh, I can save money. It's safe for me to have money. And then they think, I'm actually really good at managing money. And if I'm really good at managing money, I'm really good at making investments. And you can see then how that changes things. And you can see how that changes, relationships, how that changes parenting styles
Hmm.
and beliefs and what we're putting into it. So that is secretly probably one of my favorite things, is that when we shift our thoughts, it changes our identity. And that is really a game changer for people. And it's not one other thing that I like to point out, it's not this force and pressure and like you have to completely change everything about your life overnight. It doesn't happen. It's very subtle. It's the, oh my gosh, I have money in my bank account. I almost forgot I used to eat a sleeve of Oreos every night.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just, it's very subtle, it's very natural, and that's important because that is really good for our nervous system, because the last thing any of us need is like, oh, hey, here's your new lifestyle, go put it in place. And then you're stressing out to see like, okay, I must do this, I can't do this.
Mm.
Um, so it's, oh my gosh, I could just talk about it forever.
I mean, that's so true. It's the ripple effect. It's not even just about you anymore. And even if you don't have kids, well, what about your friends, the people you spend the time with, and your aunts and your siblings? I mean, it is all a ripple effect. It's so funny. We think that, like, just little old me, like, what am I going to do to change anything else? But the second that you shift something in you, it shifts for the collective. Everyone changes when one little person does. This is it's just so fascinating. I could see myself studying RRT sometime in the future because it just blows my mind. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't touched on that are common questions?
That's a good question. I think just a couple key things is one, that can really use it for almost all things, right? I say that with caution because who knows, there's probably certain things, but I use this with my daughter. So I use it with kids, I use it with adults, myself. So it can be applied to people of any age. Um, and then it's really, I use it with health issues, money issues, relationship issues, addictions of all types. Um, like a lot of trauma, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual. There's a lot of religious trauma that comes up, or
Mm.
spiritual trauma. The other thing that I think is a sneaky thing that impacts us, but we're not like always cognitively aware of, is the like morals. And so society teaches us we should be a certain way, we should operate and look a certain way, and this moralistic belief system of good and bad and right and wrong. And it's so ingrained in us that oftentimes people come to me and they think like, this is my problem, but it's actually rooted in a belief system that they learned at a very young age, like, oh, you're a good little girl if you look pretty and you sit quiet in church and you do these things and you put the napkin on your lap, and if you're not that, then you're a bad girl. And so we get this belief system of good and bad. And so there's a lot of moralistic thought process that leads to a lot of suffering today. And I say that because it's real subtle, because it's so ingrained that a lot of times we're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that, that the
Mhm.
way I had to eat at the dinner table growing up as a little girl is the way I act in the boardroom.
Hmm.
And it's not okay for me to voice my opinion. It's not okay for me to talk unless I'm spoken to. And so you see these women that are super successful, and they have so much anxiety sitting in the boardroom because of this moralistic thinking, or that the men make the decision, or whatever it may be. So that, I say that's like a real sneaky one that a lot of times we don't see. And I just want to make sure, like, a lot of that came from most of our parents, right? And I catch myself even as a parent thinking like, oh, I don't want to use good and bad as indicators to raise her. And I catch myself with that. But I also don't ever want to point judgment, because I think most people in life are doing the best they can. So our parents did the best they could, and we now know more, and we know how that thought process impacts our brain, and we know it's unhealthy, so let's just shift it and not keep doing it. But the moralistic thinking is a really, really big one that has harmed, I would say, a lot of people, and how we view ourselves and what worthiness looks like. So all ages, really any facet can be addressed. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The other things really um, that pop up a lot are the confusion, or where we confuse sensation and identity. So
Hmm.
this comes up a lot, right? So I feel crappy, therefore I am crappy. No. So a lot of times it's just unlinking the sensation with the identity. Just because I feel or experience something doesn't mean that's what I am. So for instance, confidence is one that comes like, I'm just not confident and at work, or I'm not confident in my body. So that impacts my sexual relationships with my partner. And, but confidence isn't who we are. So there might be something you're really confident in. Like, I'm really confident in baking. I'm not confident in my artistic ability. That doesn't mean I'm confident. Like, confidence comes and goes based on the task. Confidence comes and goes based on the activity. If you ask me to play hockey, I'm not confident. You ask me to play basketball, I'm super confident, right? And so, but we link that. We think, oh, I'm not confident in this, therefore I'm not confident. And then we like kind of claim that title. So it's unlinking. So if some areas, so the easiest way to think about that is like sensations come and go, these titles come and go. So if I can feel confident in one thing and not in the other, that's a sensation. Sometimes I'm confident, sometimes I'm not, versus who I am. I'm 5'9", I have lighter skin. That's my identity to some degree. Those things don't change. And so what I find a lot is just simply a conversation of people we've taken, because we've been taught to do this sensation we're feeling, and we grab a hold of it as if it's our identity, and it's not. And so once we unlink those, we can see like, I'm confident sometimes, I'm not confident. I'm feeling sexy in my body sometimes. Other times I feel like, this roly-poly, pudgy little girl, right? Like, it's just a sensation. It's not who I am. And so that's another big thing that you know, I see come up. That's real simple to shift. Usually in one session is just that unlinking, but
Especially as women, because we're so cyclical.
yes.
And, like today, I could be completely different than how I show up tomorrow. But we take that and we're like, oh man, well, that means I just suck at business, or I can't do this, or I can't make sales, or whatever. When yesterday I made three of them, like just fine. It's so
Then we make
ridiculous.
that mean something about us, right? Like, I'm crazy, like I'm all over the
Hmm.
board. One day I'm up, one day I'm down, and we
Yep.
make all this stuff mean something versus like, I didn't have sale today.
Hmm.
Yesterday I had three, today I don't have any. I'm curious when the next one comes in.
Yep. Really, my emotional authorities will know exactly what you're talking about as they're listening. And so you are coming into the magnetic rebellion, and you're not just teaching what RRT is, but you're actually leading us through a clearing of some sort. So can you give a little like taster and let us know exactly what you're going to be doing?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And this is another aspect of RRT I hadn't mentioned, but yeah, so what I will be doing is bringing everyone into this relaxed state. And then one of the key things that we can do, that we will be doing, is picking something that we want to change in our lives. So it could be, I really want to go to the gym 3 days a week, right? And what I'll do is, in our mind, I'm going to walk us through this process that creates interest and possibility. Because in order for our minds to take a hold of anything, we need to make sure that interest is there. We have to be interested in it, and possibility. But this means that the possibility that I see that I can do it, the possibility for myself. So the process I'll be walking through is super powerful, where we can transform one thing, and we take it from, I'm not very good at this, or I want to change this, or I want to stop this, or I want to create, add, whatever you want to change. And we're going to walk through a process where we create the interest and see the possibility to do so. And what it's doing is it's actually creating a new wave, a new pathway in our mind. So it's energetically creating the space, and then it's paving the new way so that your mind thinks it's already happened. And now it just is the new way. So it's a really, really simple way to transform one thing. So I've had people literally change their entire eating framework by changing one thing. And it was like, one gal came to me, she's like, I hate making food, so I don't make it. And then I get starving, and then I end up going out to eat, and then I'm upset with myself, and then I've gained weight. And so she just changed one thing, and that was enjoyment of making food.
Mm.
And to this day, she has loved making her food. She is much healthier. She's lost the weight. She's hit some of her goals by changing that one thing. Another was money. So the other one was like, as soon as I get money, I spend money. As soon as I get money. So she just saw herself saving money and like how good that felt. And then making aligned choices, like aligned spending choices. She's now like has more savings than she dreamed of when we first met. So
Oh.
it's a really powerful way, and I'm super excited for all of the individuals in there to pick that one thing. We're going to walk through that process, create that new pathway, and then with all of the individuals that I've used this specific process with, they all come back and say, I like almost forgot that I used to just not eat and then go out to get food, or that I always used to spend every dime that came in. Like it's
Mhm.
so not them anymore that it's almost hard to think about. So that's the process we'll be working and doing, and I'm super excited. It's very powerful.
I'm already making my list. I'm like, I'm gonna do this workshop like 5 times because it'll be recorded so we can go
Yes.
back and do it for like as many times as we want. So I'm like,
Yep.
I'm gonna do this thought and this belief and this one. Just keep knocking
Yes.
them out.
Yep. And that's the key. You're right. So it'll be recorded. So you can take the recording and just plug in a new thing. The key is that you're going to want one specific thing, and let's shift that because our mind responds to specificity versus generalities. So this is like this woman was like, we're going to enjoy making food. It changed a bunch of other stuff,
Mhm.
right? But the enjoyment of making food was the nugget we changed. So
Yeah, the reason why I think this is going to be so juicy for the Magnetic Rebellion specifically is because it's a community for the spiritually curious. Meaning, if they were anything like me when I first started this journey, it was hard to trust anything spiritual, anything energetic. So, this will be the perfect thing to just like jumpstart their connection if they're struggling with, I just don't trust these systems, or I just don't know if this can work for me, or I don't feel connected to anything. Like, there we go. I'm bringing in the science so that we can rewire a little bit to give you like the perfect jump off start. Like, this is going to be awesome. Thank you so much for being here. How can people connect with you?
yeah, the easiest way. So thank you for having me. I'm super excited to run your group through this program
Mhm.
here in a few weeks. Um, the easiest way would be on Instagram at she.is.fox. So at she.is.fox. I wish I had an easier handle. But I always have, I mean, people can DM me with questions. I handle all my own DMs, and then I always have the current offers and things of that nature. So it's the easiest way to find stuff.
Nice. Thank you. And we'll link it in the show notes too. So anyone can just literally click your handle, excuse me, and easily be redirected. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, thank you, and likewise.